Welcome back to Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit, and today I am super excited to be joined by USC football and former NFL quarterback Cody Kessler. And Cody, this is a really cool interview for me because you're one of the first USC players I can ever recall seeing on TV when I was growing up as a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Crash and I get to work together too on the Victory podcast. So we haven't got a chance to do an interview like this. So I'm excited, bud.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to have you. Make sure to follow him on Instagram at ckessler6. So, Cody, let's get into this interview, or as we would say on the Victory podcast, the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Keely,
You got to send that to Keely.
Keely, please don't sue me over that. All right, but anyways, Cody, I want to kind of talk to you about like when you first got into football, like what got you into, and how old were you when that happened?
Yeah, I was very young. I grew up in a sports family. My mom, she played volleyball and basketball, and then my dad played football and baseball, and they both were coaching high school sports when I was growing up. So I would go to my mom's volleyball practice in the morning or in the afternoon, and then I'd get over there to football practice at night with my dad. So yeah, I mean, it was ever since I could pretty much walk, I was trying to throw a football around. But I actually played Crash in third grade. Was my first year of tackle, and I hated it. They had me playing offensive line. You know, all the coaches' kids were playing the quarterback and the receiver and all those cool positions. So I quit. I think 2 weeks into it, I quit. And I was like, I am never playing football ever again in my life. I was done. I wanted to play basketball and baseball. And then sure enough, a couple years later, I had some friends. I think it was fifth grade. I had some friends go play, and they invited me out. I went out there, and they were like, hey, you should try quarterback. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then I fell in love with the sport around, so I'd say around like fifth grade.
Gotcha. And then kind of you talked about some of those tougher times, and even after you kind of were fully like into it, what made you stay with it even when times got tough?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of teammates, a lot of good friends that they would kind of pick you up when you're down, right? That was so important, especially at a young age, because you don't really know how far you can go with a sport when you're in fifth grade, sixth grade, even middle school, until you get to about high school. So there were a couple times when we would lose some games, and I'd question if I wanted to keep playing or I'd want to go play basketball or do something else. But I had some great teammates around me. My parents were phenomenal. My dad started coaching me in middle school. He walked away from high school ball, and then my mom was always there when I would go to tournaments or 7-on-7 tournaments or going to LA and doing all those things. So I had a really good support system to pick me up when I had some bad moments.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that's true even now these days, like what you're doing now with USC. I mean, your mom's always sending in questions to you and
Yeah.
Keely. So yeah, the
Yeah.
support is really evident. I mean, aren't there Instagrams like Trojan mom and Trojan dad even too?
Yeah, they've been a great support for me. And that's how it is. How your parents are the same way. When it's tough to do things on your own, right? And I would have never been able to go to some of those AAU basketball tournaments by myself when I was 12. I would have never been able to go play some of those football tournaments or go to the USC camps or the UCLA camps, although I'm not really proud about that one, but I ended up going to some of those camp force down. But it was great for them to be able to support me. And then they came to pretty much every game that I played in. When I got to USC, I'm from Bakersfield, so it was only 2.5 hours away. So it was nice that I could have family and friends come watch me. But yeah, my parents have always supported me, whether it's in football or after football.
And then I do want to now ask you about, you talked a little bit about it going to camps. Like, what was your recruiting process like, and what ultimately made you choose USC?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I didn't even know that I was going to play football in college until probably my junior year is when I really decided, because I played basketball a lot too, and I ended up having some offers for basketball pretty early on. Played varsity as a freshman and went to some camps. So I was back and forth all the time. Okay, am I going to go play college basketball? Am I going to play college football? And I would say around my junior year, I really made that decision to stick full time to football because the recruiting process started picking up. And I got my first offer actually as a sophomore, and it was from Fresno State. Or no, I'm sorry, it was New Mexico State was my very first offer. And then the second one was from Fresno State. After that second or third offer, I was like, okay, there might be something there. And then I kept going to some of those camps. And yeah, ultimately came down to, and I've told this story before, but I don't know if I've told you this, but I was going to commit to Washington actually the night before I committed to USC. And I'll give you the shortened version. But my best friend, Jared Norris, he played linebacker at Utah. So we were both at the same high school. He committed to Utah that night. And I told him, okay, well, I'm going to commit to Washington to Coach Sarkisian, who was there at the time. And I was ready to go. I was like, I'm going to commit. I'm going to go to Washington. I had the purple shirt on and everything. Just something told me, all right, sleep on it. Wait until the morning and then commit in the morning. And FC hadn't offered me yet. I had about 25 offers, but USC wasn't one of them. Went to bed that night, woke up, went to my head coach's office and was like, all right, call Sarkisian, let's do it. Crash, I kid you not, I'm sitting there and on the phone it pops up, University of Southern California. Lane Kiffin was calling my coach to let him know, hey, we want to offer Cody. We hope he hasn't committed anywhere else. We'd love for a chance to, to get to talk to him again. And then I saw that as a sign, took a step back, and then ultimately chose USC.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I think you made the right choice there.
I agree with you. And it was funny too, because when Sarkeesian got here, he's like, "Hey, you tried to run from me once, but now I got to coach you now." So it was pretty cool.
I was probably gonna ask you that later, but I'll definitely ask you about Sark in a
Yeah,
bit. But I do now want to ask you, like, just how do you find yourself fitting in with the other guys at USC once you got to college?
Yeah, it was tough at first. I mean, I was from Bakersfield, which is a smaller kind of country farm town. It's a lot different than the big city, right? Our tallest building, I think, is maybe 5 stories, and that's the news building downtown. So it was a bit of a culture shock to me when I got to USC. But again, had some great teammates, great support guys around me. I was actually in a quarterback competition the first 2 years with a guy named Max Whittick because Matt Barkley was the starter at the time, and we knew he was the guy. So first year, I ended up beating Max out, and I got the second string spot. The second year, when Barkley decided to come back, I ended up getting the third string spot and lost that backup position to Max Whittick. And that was probably one of the toughest times of my college career because all those thoughts went through my head about should I transfer? Should I go somewhere else? Am I never going to play here? I'm now third string. What's the future going to be like? But took a deep breath and talked to my family and said a couple of prayers and kind of calmed down and weathered the emotions. And it ended up working out for the best. But yeah, again, just everywhere I've been, whether I was a young kid playing football or when I got to USC, although the times around you may be tough, I had a great support system and some great teammates to help me out.
And then even though you were the backup, or just backup or third string, what did you learn just sitting behind Matt Barkley and just especially seeing all the success he had leading the Trojans?
Yeah, Matt is awesome. I just talked to Matt yesterday. Actually, he's one of my best friends. I told you guys he invited me to the Masters, and I didn't get to go to it, unfortunately. But we're really close to this day. Matt was awesome. He's such a great role model. He helped me out so much. I had so many questions about how do you do this? How do you handle school as a freshman? How do you handle practice and organization and doing all these things so I can go out there and perform at my best on the practice field? And whatever question I had, Matt would answer. And he was great. And got to go to his wedding later on. And we built that relationship with a lot of my teammates to where they really helped me out when I got there. But I'll tell you this, and I worked with some younger quarterbacks back in Bakersfield for a little while. I always tell them, whether you're second, third string, or you're a walk-on and you're fifth string and may never see the field in your life, you have to prepare every single day like you are the starter. Because if that opportunity comes and you've been preparing like you're the starter the whole time, you're going to hit the ground running. If you don't treat it that way and you think, oh, I'm just a backup, I'll never play, and then two guys get hurt, and next thing you know, you're going into the game, you're not going to be prepared. So that was the biggest thing for me was lean on the older guys, but also being third string, still treat every practice and meeting and workout like I was the starter.
And that leads me into my next question, Cody, which was what was that like? Obviously, then battling first Max Whittick and then Max Brown for that starting job in your final 3 years of college.
Yeah, it was tough. Me and Max Whittick had a competition for really 2.5 years. Those first 2 years when I was second string, and then the next year when I was third string, and then Barkley leaves, and me and Max are both getting a shot to battle for that first spot. It went back and forth for a while. It actually went into season. So the first game I played the first half, Whittick played the second half. Then the second game I played the first half again. Whittick played the second half, and then ultimately I got the job the third week and never really looked back from there. But it was tough. There's a lot of ups and downs when you're in a quarterback competition, when you're playing against a guy who's a very good player. Max was a very good player. You've got to know that some days he's going to win and some days you're going to win. You just can't get too high or too low, especially as a leader at the quarterback spot. And then, like I said, won the job my sophomore year, played well. And then the next year, Sark takes over, and it's the quarterback competition again. Max Brown's coming in, who was a 5-star. So I just knew that I had to go and compete again. But that's the way you want it, right? When you're a competitor, you don't want anything handed to you. You want to go out there and compete against some very good players and earn it, so then you feel a little bit better and have some more confidence going into the year.
So obviously, then during your time, you played for two full-time head coaches as well as an interim head coach in Ed Ogeron. So what were all those experiences like, and how were they just different? Just how they, ran the team like when they were leading the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was probably the toughest thing of my college experience was all the different coaches that I had. And you mentioned three coaches, but there was 5 different times that got switched up. So I got recruited by Pete Carroll when he was here. He actually started recruiting me. Then I committed to Lane Kiffin as my coach for 2.5 years. Then he gets fired midway through the year. Ed Ogeron takes over for, I think, 7 or 8 games. And then they let him go at the end of the year. And then Clay Helton takes over for the bowl game. And then the next year, Sarkeesian is now the head coach for a year and a half. Then he gets let go, and then Clay Helton takes over again, and then he sticks. But yeah, it was tough. That was a thing too. And I always tell players this and kids when they're going through the recruiting process. Yes, you want to play for a great coach, and that is important. But you have to know, and the world that we play in college football, coaches are going to come and go, right? Things are going to change. You got to make sure you're committing to a great program, a great school. That's why no matter who was the coach, I was so comfortable because I was at USC, and whether I got to play in the NFL or not, I was going to have a degree and graduate from there. And I think that's what really separates USC among some of these other big time football schools. But yeah, it was tough. It was adversity after adversity every year. And not, I don't have one bad thing to say about those coaches. It was unfortunate. Loved playing for Kiffin. Wish he would have stuck around. Ed Ogeron, Crash, he would have loved Ed O. He was unbelievable in person. And then obviously Coach Sark was great. And then Clay Helton was really the one consistent for me those 5 years as a quarterback coach. And then he took over as the head coach.
And then I do want to go back to Coach O for a sec because obviously he had that big win against Stanford and everyone stormed the Coliseum. What was that like for you? Because as far as storming has gone for me, I've only gotten to storm one basketball game my freshman year, but have not gotten to storm the Collie. So what was that like just seeing the fans just pour onto the field and surround you guys?
Yeah, that was like a big lead up moment, really, that year, because that was when we started out struggling. That was my first year starting when I was splitting time with Max Wittick. And then obviously I took over as a starter. A couple games later, Lane Kiffin gets fired and it was after we got off the plane and that whole story. And there's just a lot of controversy around that. Ed Ogeron takes over. We're going into a bye week. What's really going to happen? And then we kind of got on a hot streak there. And then it all led up to that game. It was just a big kind of climax getting to that game. It was on ESPN game day, which was awesome with Kirk Herbstreit and that whole thing where they did, everyone was out there at 4:30 a.m. doing the pregame show. You would have probably been front row with the caution tape on. I know you would have loved that, which
Absolutely.
would be cool. Would be cool if we get to have that again at USC, get a game day experience. But yeah, it was awesome. Stanford was number 3 in the country at the time, and we were on a high, but obviously everyone had us as the underdogs. There were a lot of question marks. We were unranked. Stanford was a very good football team, and just everything went our way. It was back and forth. It was a heavyweight fight, and it came down to the very end. And Andre Hidari, who is a fellow Bakersfield football player, he was our kicker at the time. He made a 48-yarder, and they had to hold him off the field because Stanford actually had one more play where they tried to do the throw and the lateral and try to have one last a chance to win the game. And then as soon as that play was over, you couldn't hold them anymore. They rushed the field. I got lost, Crash. I don't even remember what happened. I was looking for my family. I randomly found my mom at one point, saw some of my buddies, and then other than that, it was just a big blur. But it was one of the cool experiences I've ever got to have at USC.
It looks so cool, even just seeing it on TV as a kid. Like it was like
it was, buddy.
I was like so hoping it would happen at some point while I was in college, but it is what it is.
Hey, I'll tell you what, you never know. There was college kids on the field. There was kids on the field. There was grownups that were decades of Trojan fans that were on the field. So everyone stormed it. So you don't have to just be a student. Let's see if it happens again for USC and you can be part of it.
Very true. And then I did want to ask you about what was it like playing in, and winning, 2 big bowl games, both the Vegas Bowl in 2013 and then the Holiday Bowl in 2014.
Yeah, the Vegas Bowl was great. It was cool for me because I got to go against Derek Carr, who's a really close friend of mine. We were both from Bakersfield, and people were kind of calling it the Bakersfield Bowl. And so David Carr, actually Derek's older brother, he trained me and Derek when we were in high school. So that was a cool moment getting to go against him. And Fresno State was a school that I loved when I was growing up. That was one of the places that I was really considering just being close to home. But yeah, that was cool. That was a year we got our 10th win. It was a long season, a lot of ups and downs, but that was a great win. And then the Holiday Bowl, my junior year, was cool. That was a big time game too, going against Nebraska. They were a very good football team, and we were a player or two away that year from being in the Rose Bowl as well, which would have been pretty sweet. But that was the season we lost in a Hail Mary to ASU, which was heartbreaking. And then we lost with 3 seconds left to Utah. So we were a couple plays away from being, I think, 10-2, not having a chance to play in the Rose Bowl, but we found a way to win in the Holiday Bowl and played a great opponent, Nebraska.
Yeah, and then also, what was it like, your final year of college playing for the Pac-12 title? Ultimately, you didn't win that one, but what was that just experience like of, knowing that if you'd won that, you were likely going to go to the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, that was a crazy year. That was the year that Coach Sark ended up getting fired 5 games in. I think we were preseason number 6. We started out the year great, had a tough loss against Stanford, but bounced back. And then after that, we had a tough loss against Washington, and then Sark got fired. So it was a crazy experience trying to keep everybody together and keep everybody positive in the locker room. But yeah, we ended up going out and winning the Pac-12 South, which was really cool. We beat UCLA, so 4 is down again, and we beat them at the Coliseum. My last ever home game, we played against UCLA, and it was, if we win, we go to the Pac-12 championship. If they win, they get to go. So that was a cool moment. And then we played Stanford. Just unfortunately that year, Stanford had a guy named Christian McCaffrey who decided to go for about 500 yards in that game. and he threw a touchdown, so that was tough. But no, it was a cool experience, Crash. We it was that my college year was tough. There was a lot of adversity. We were kind of dealing with the back end of the sanctions because we didn't get to have those scholarships. We lost 30 scholarships over those last couple of years. But like I said, some really great teammates around me that made my college experience a great time.
Now, I do want to ask you, like, what were just some of your other like favorite moments playing for USC?
Oh, there was some cool ones, man. My first start, like my first official start, those first two games was splitting, but my first official start against it was Boston College. I think it was week 3. Boston College week 3 was really cool. We won that game. I think I went for like 15 straight completions at one point, and just it was a prove it game for me. So it was a lot of pressure, and for it to go the way it did was just such a huge relief, and it was really cool. Getting to break Matt Barkley's record for throwing single touchdowns in a game, throwing 7 against Colorado was cool, just because of how close me and Matt were, and he was the first one to call me and congratulate me. The Stanford win my junior year, when we beat them, I think 49-14 and threw 6 touchdowns in that game. So just some really cool ones, man. But the best ones for me is, like you said, probably the Stanford game. Just that experience and them rushing the field, you just can't really beat that.
Absolutely. And then, do you have any like favorite memories that weren't related to football while you're at USC?
Yeah, I mean, I made some really cool friends off the field. It was, like I said, it was tough going from Bakersfield to LA. I didn't fit in quite right. I would wear my country boots sometimes to campus, and people would give me a funny look. And but it really is, once you get settled in, again, great teammates. But I kind of branched out a little bit and started going to some different sporting events. Started going to some of the sporting things that they would do at J.K. McKay Center, and we'd be able to go to the John McKay Center and go and talk to some other sports and branch out a little bit, which was awesome. But yeah, no, I was pretty much all football all the time, so not too many other things outside of that. But and just for, I mean, you're living there now, just the experience you get living in Southern California. You're 10 minutes from the beach, you're 10 minutes from Hollywood, you're 10 minutes from Santa Monica. There's so many different things you can do, and then obviously USC's campus is just absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're so right on all that. And then going back to football, like what was just your preparation for the draft? Like, can you talk me through like just what you did to prepare and just what that process and experience was like leading up to your selection?
Yeah, it was right after that. So unfortunately, we lost our bowl game to Wisconsin my senior year. But as soon as that game ended, I was driving back from San Diego to Los Angeles, and I stopped in Santa Monica to go meet with an agent and look at where I was going to be training. It was an immediate turnover. That next Monday, I actually went out there and started my workouts and all of that. And it's just, the first thing up is the combine, right? Well, actually, you have the Senior Bowl if you get invited to it. Fortunately, I got to play in that. So I didn't really get a break. As soon as season ended, it went right into it. And it really felt like you don't get an off season when you finish your senior year and then you get ready for the draft, or junior, whatever year it may be, because you go straight into training, or else you're not going to be ready for the draft and the Senior Bowl and all that. So that was a cool experience. I got to work with some really good guys around me too. I got to throw to some great players. We had about 15 of us in that group when we were training with Athletes First, my agency. But yeah, I got ready for the Senior Bowl, went out to Mobile, Alabama, played well in that. You come back, you continue to keep doing your prep. It's morning workouts, afternoon throwing sessions, and then you go work out in the gym and later in the afternoon and do some recovery as well. And then you go do the combine in February, which was an unreal experience, which was absolutely crazy. And then after that, it's pretty much just individual workouts, some pro day stuff. You're meeting with some other teams, and then before you know it, the draft's there, and it's straight to an NFL team.
Oh, wow. And then, wow, that sounds really chaotic then.
Yeah.
But then I do want to ask, like, what was that like when you heard your name called in the third round?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was funny too, because I was sitting there and ESPN reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to come over and set up cameras and do those at home things where you see the guys at home with the family and they're filming in the living room." I was against that. I was like, I'm not going to do that because I don't know what's going to happen. I had some crazy projections. Some were saying second round, some were saying fourth. Like there was just second to fourth. I don't know what day it's going to be. I don't want to be one of those guys sitting there and nothing happens and the cameras are sitting there and everyone's just looking sad. So I was like, I'm just going to keep it, close, just my family, my friends, and my old high school coach, some people that were, helped me get to where I were over at the house, but I didn't do any cameras. And then I was sitting there in the third round, what was going through, and I knew Cleveland was a team that was very interested in me. And I went out to Ohio and did a workout for them. And I saw my phone ring and it said Berea, Ohio, which is where their facilities are at. And I was like, okay, is this it? And they were actually 5 picks away from taking the pick. So for those of you who don't know at home, you don't get called right when they're on the clock. When it gets to those kind of later rounds or second and third round and it's not the live, they walk up on the stadium or walk up on the stage and all that, they know what's going on about 4 or 5 picks ahead. So I saw Cleveland was coming up, phone rang, and they said, "Hey, Cody, we're going to take you here in the next couple picks." And actually the phone dropped like twice. They called me and I picked up, and it hung up, and they called me again, and we kept playing like phone tag. And then finally they got through, and they're like, hey, congratulations, you're coming to Cleveland and all that. So it was a crazy moment. It was pretty cool. But yeah, it was just a lot of build up and just an emotional release, and everyone was excited and crying. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
So I do want to follow up real quick on just that when they gave you the call. So is that typically like the set kind of after the first round, that first night, it's like it doesn't like move as fast, or there's not as much, I guess, media just involvement in it as much to that same extent as there is like in the first round where it's like the 5 minutes, they use it all, the commissioner comes out, speaks, and then there's the whole thing with them in attendance and all that.
Yeah, it's pretty. So when you get to like the second and third, the second's pretty similar to the first. Not too much of a difference. I guess second and third are, but it's not like the first round where they have 5-10 minutes on the clock, and sometimes it goes over, and they're getting the jerseys and the hats and all that ready. When it gets to the second and third, it's a cell phone call. Guys are at home. There's no one really left in the green room unless some of those first round guys go into the second round. But yeah, they're pretty much 4 or 5 picks ahead when they let you know that you're getting drafted, and the clock time gets slower and slower, or gets quicker and quicker as the rounds go on. I think by the 6th or 7th round, each team has like 2 minutes to make your call or make their pick, because they pretty much know where they're going from there. But yeah, it was crazy because, like I said, they were 5 picks away, and the phone rang and it said Ohio. And I was like, wait, well, Cleveland's not up yet. They're not picking for another 5 more picks. But sure enough, I found out when I got there that, yeah, we're way ahead. The TV's a little bit behind. Guys are finding out before they actually find out on TV.
I find that really interesting just because I've only, like I said, really watched the first round. So it's just definitely
Yeah.
interesting to kind of hear from someone who went through that, what that experience was like of kind of finding out before really the rest of the country does.
Yeah, it's really nerve wracking because you're just sitting there, and the worst part is, Crash, when you're sitting there and your phone is waiting for a phone call, and then like one of your friends calls you and just sees what you're doing, or your phone, like you get like a random app update or something, you look at it thinking that it's a team calling. So it's a nerve wracking 24 hours, but it's definitely worth it to hear your name called.
And then so then can you talk to me just kind of like what that was like getting to training camp with the Browns and kind of what that kind of first year was like with them?
Yeah, it was crazy. At that time, Cleveland, and still to this day, Cleveland's been struggling a little bit, and haven't gotten over that hump for a while now. And they've had some flashes of being good again. But when I got there, it was pretty consistent with, frustration after frustration, some years to where they couldn't really, get to where they wanted to be as an organization. So I knew there was a lot of pressure going into it, but also I had Robert Griffin III ahead of me. I had Josh McCown ahead of me. So I knew that I wasn't coming in to have to start right away, that I could learn from those guys in red shirt. Basically, they called it an NFL red shirt, and sit behind them and get to kind of watch and go through practice. But yeah, it's a quick turnaround. There's a big gap between high school to college, but there's an even bigger gap when you get from college to the NFL. Just everyone is so talented at that level. It's the best of the best. Even at rookie minicamp and OTAs and all of those things, there's some really talented players out there that don't even make the roster. So it's definitely a big challenge. But yeah, that first year was crazy, right? Like I said, I went in there to be the third string guy, to learn from the 2 vets ahead of me. RG3 got hurt in the first game. Josh McCown gets hurt in the second game. So I was starting by week 3 and kind of got thrown into the fire. But it was good. I played well as a rookie, was proud of some of the performances I had. We were just struggling to finish some games, had some close calls there early on, a couple games that came down to the very last moment, and some things that just didn't go our way. But yeah, it was challenging, but I learned a lot about myself as a freshman or as a rookie in Cleveland, and some good, some bad, but I learned how to handle some adversity. But I got to lean back on some of those tough moments at USC as well that helped me a lot as a rookie.
I do want to just ask you, like, what was that like when you were told you were going to be the starter in week 3 with the Browns, and then just kind of walk me through what that was like, just knowing that you were going to be taking the field and basically running the offense.
Yeah, it was. I mean, so I knew when Robert got hurt in week 1, RG3 got hurt in week 1. I knew, okay, so now I'm going to be the backup. Josh McCown's going. Josh McCown got hit, I think, in the second quarter in week 2, and I knew he was hurt, but he wanted to finish the game. So I thought I was going in that game because I knew he went to the locker room, got X-rays, all of that. He was hurt. I want to say he broke or fractured like his collarbone or something, but he said, "Hey, I'm gonna tough it out." He's one of the toughest, coolest people I've ever been around. I'm so happy what he got to do with Sam Darnold this year in Minnesota, and the Sam having Josh to help him out. I know exactly what that's like. So it was great to get to play behind him. But yeah, so he gets hurt. I think I'm going in week 2. Sure enough, he finishes the game. But you know what? For me, and it's like I told you earlier, Crash, I prepared though like I was a starter, even when I was a third string guy. I treated practices, I treated meetings, film sessions, all these different things like I was playing every single week, even if I wasn't. So when the time came for me to be the starter, there were some nerves and there were some things that, you don't really prepare for. You don't know what's going to happen until you get on the field. But I felt very prepared with all the things I've been doing leading up to that moment, that it went better than, expected. The first series was a little rough, but once I settled into the game, it went very smoothly, played well, and had some big time plays. And we were a field goal kick away at the very end. We went to overtime actually to beat the Dolphins. So it was a pretty cool game.
Gotcha. And then obviously you got released multiple times during your career, and your career didn't probably go the way you were hoping. But what did you learn from just those experiences, whether you're starting or on the bench, or just fighting for position for like where you'd be on the depth chart?
Yeah, man, it's kind of like life. There's going to be some ups and downs, things that you work so hard for that maybe don't go your way, but you've got to be able to kind of overcome those situations and handle adversity. But I was very fortunate. I got to play 4 years in the NFL. I got vested. I did what I wanted to do as a kid. That was my dream, right? And I actually walked away on my own terms, which was kind of nice. And I had some opportunities to keep playing actually from some other teams my fifth year, but I turned those down and decided that, I wanted to step away from the game. And it was tough, early on in Cleveland, kind of hurt a little bit. And there were some situations that made it very tough. And then Jacksonville, my third year, didn't go great. So for me, I was kind of going back and forth of do I want to keep playing? Do I want to walk away and start coaching, doing broadcasting, do something else about it? But yeah, I love football, and I'm obviously want to do something that's still in football. So I chose the media side of stuff. But yeah, it's like anything in life. There's going to be some highs, there's going to be some lows, but you got to stay neutral and you got to be able to overcome those low moments.
Before I ask you about just your broadcasting career, now I do want to ask, like when you were with the Patriots, what was it like playing with Tom Brady?
Yeah, he was cool. He was awesome. You'd love him, man. He was a really cool guy, down to earth. I mean, when game days came though, and it was time to play, he would turn on a switch that I'd never seen anybody else ever turn on. Like, he was very personal, very nice in the locker room. Hey, how's it going, buddy? How's your day going? How's the family? How's Paige? How's everybody doing? Very nice in the locker room to every other, whether you're a starter or you're a practice squad guy, treated everybody the same. As soon as game day came around, he would turn on this switch, and you could just see it in his eyes, and he would go out there and be Tom Brady and be who he was. But off the field, in the locker room, in the meeting room, unbelievable person. He really was. He's a great teammate. One of the better people that I've met in the NFL, because you see some people, you play with that have some egos and think they're better than everyone else. That was not Tom. And I'm not just saying that. And I learned a lot from him. And it's helped me too in my broadcasting career, being able to pick, his brain when we were in meetings and hear the way that he talks about things and different perspectives that he had. Now I can relay that in some of the stuff I do with broadcasting now. So it's been cool to get to look back and say, yeah, I played with Tom Brady.
I did also ask you what it was like playing for Bill Belichick as well, like, and just what you learned from him.
Yeah, Coach Belichick is exactly who he is on those press conferences. When you see him, very short, very to the point, very serious, that's who he is. Now, we got to spend a lot of time with Bill, actually. On Saturdays, the day before games, he would come in and we would do a meeting with the quarterbacks and just Coach Belichick, and that was it. And he would kind of walk us through what he wants done that week. And to listen to Tom Brady and Belichick talk about the game plan and going through preparation stuff was just amazing in itself. And yeah, it was cool. But I was like that when I was a player. I enjoyed that of coming to work, right? Getting the things that you need to get done, right? You can have some fun a little bit along the way, but make sure you handle business first. And then afterwards you can go enjoy yourself. And that's how Coach Belichick was. When you're in the building, when you're in the facility, we are going to make sure we're doing everything to win. And then when you check out and you go home with your friends and family, then you can have some fun and relax a little bit. So I love playing for him. I know there's been some good stories, some bad stories over the years about Coach Belichick, but me personally, I absolutely had a blast and really got to know him. And I thought he was a great coach.
Especially with both the success and just all the stories about him. And as someone who played for him, I had to ask you about both Brady and Belichick, especially with the number of Super Bowls they both won.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime I can talk about those guys, I definitely will. It was a cool experience.
So now I want to ask you about kind of what got you into what made you decide to get into do like broadcasting for football?
Yeah, so when I got done playing, it was a COVID year actually. It was actually it was 2020, and I had an offer to keep playing from a couple teams, and a backup role come in and be a backup guy, and I was ready to walk away. Right, I knew that I wanted to go somewhere else, and whether it's coaching or go do broadcasting or whatever it may be. My time playing, I felt like was done. So when I got done, I was kind of going back and forth. So the first thing I thought is, all right, I'm going to coach. That's what every former player does first, right? You go coach, whether it's high school, your son's Pee Wee team, it's college, it's the NFL, whatever it may be. as a former athlete, the first thing you think about doing is coaching. So I went and I was working with an agency, Athletes First, which I still work with to this day now for broadcasting. But as a player, I was with them. And then I started working with one of their agents for the coaching side of things, explored some avenues there, was talking to some other teams. And I actually went out to a seminar in Arizona. It was like a retreat to go meet other coaches and network. And it was a lot of the top coaches in college and the NFL. Went great. Met some great coaches there. Was starting to get some good feedback. I had dinner one night with Mark Sanchez. I was talking to Mark. Me and Mark are really close. I worked out with Mark for a while when I was in college, and he was with the Jets. But got really close to Mark, and he said, "Hey, man, come over here. Let's talk a little bit." We're talking, and he's like, "What are you trying to coach? What are you doing here? What's the next step?" I'm like, "Yeah, man. Like, I want to see if I can do this." He was like, what's going on with your family? I told him my wife and I were I think at the time about to get engaged and get married, wanting to start a family and all that. He said, "Look, I tried coaching, or I thought about it as well. Just it's an 11 and a half months job, especially at college, because once you get done on the field, you're recruiting the entire offseason. You know that. I mean, it's nonstop recruiting the entire time." He said, "Have you ever thought about broadcasting?" He's like, "I'm doing it. Mark's doing it. Matt Leinert's doing it. Reggie's doing it. All these former SC guys are doing it. We're having a blast. Have you ever thought about that?" And I said, "No, I actually haven't, in a serious way. I've thought about it before, but I wanted to start coaching first." He talked me into it. Sure enough, I called USC and said, "Hey, do you guys have any opportunities or things to do?" At the time, they had some openings for the Trojan Tailgate show, and Keely wanted to start doing the podcast. They gave me an opportunity, and ever since then, it kind of took off.
Yeah, so now I want to ask you, like, what's it now like being back at USC, working, on the Trojan Tailgate Show, Trojans Live, the Victory Podcast with Keely, or what have just all those experiences just been like, kind of, and really just, building your resume in the broadcasting space?
Yeah, it's been awesome. USC is always going to be home for me, as I'm sure it will be for you, right? Once you're a Trojan, you're always a Trojan, and that really is true. Yeah, fight on. I mean, the Trojan family is one of the best things in the entire world. I firmly believe that. Whether you went to the school, whether you didn't, and you just loved USC football, it's so cool. All the people that I've interacted with, but like I said, yeah, just coming back to USC was awesome. And that was in a time where I didn't know what I was going to do next, like I just mentioned. So they gave me an opportunity. Keely saw the vision. We like to joke around a little bit that she was the Ed Ogeron of broadcasting recruiting, and she had me on the show, and it went well. So she was like, "Hey, let's make this a full-time thing." And then that kind of took off with everything else. So that was awesome. And yeah, I mean, I'm starting to do some bigger things now, all because of the opportunity that USC gave me. And it was cool to get back around, the Coliseum and the team and all of that, because I've been gone for so long doing the NFL stuff. I didn't get to come back. So when I did the broadcasting experience, that was my first time coming back to the Coliseum. So it was awesome that they're helping me get the opportunities that I have now. And like I said, USC will always be home. So anytime I get to come back and be around the Trojans, I'm definitely going to do it.
What have been some of your favorite just memories from just your experiences with like kind of everything? Trojans Live, Victory Pod, Tailgate Show, whether it's your guest interviews or whoever. Because I mean, I've watched a few interviews. I mean, I've watched your the Trojans Live interview with Rob Ryan, which I absolutely love, but also just like some other experiences too.
You know what, Crash? You got to see what you can do. We got to get Rob Ryan on behind the caution tape. That would be that would be a cool guest for this type of interview or for this type of podcast. But yeah, Rob was great. He was my most recent interview, so he's exactly who he is on TV on everything. He really is. He's the same person day in and day out, and you love that. So that's definitely up there at the top. Getting to talk to Lincoln every Monday on Trojans Live during the season is awesome. Just to hear, you see the games on film, you see the broadcast, you see all these things that are happening, you read all the articles, but to hear it from the head ball coach himself and him explain what he sees and his vision going forward, and when things are going great, how he acts, and when things aren't going so great, the way that he handles adversity, it's cool to see, in person and be able to do that. So that's always fun. But yeah, my favorite thing, Trojan Tailgate's awesome with Sua. Sua's one of my best friends. Sean, Cody, Jordan Moore, they're awesome. We have fun on that show. But by far, hanging out with you guys on the Victory Podcast has been my best experience. From doing interview episodes. No, really though. I mean, doing interview episodes, and you know how hard Keely works, and you and Emily behind the scenes when you guys are producing. It's not easy. There's a lot of things that go into it, and there's some episodes to where it's hard to make sure we get everything perfectly and having to go multiple takes. And then there's some episodes that are a little bit easier. There's just a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and Keely gave me an opportunity to do that. So that's probably my most exciting thing. And you guys weren't getting to. We did a live pro day episode with some of the guys there. We got to go out to the actual pro day. We've gotten to do some other live episodes or do some other episodes at USC that have been really cool. We did the Sam Darnold interview which was great. Matt Barkley episode. So yeah, all those things are at the top, but I would say the victory pot is just a little bit higher than the rest.
To hear you say that, Cody, that means the world to me to hear you say that.
Yeah, but I mean, and you guys, you and Emily, I know me and Keely are always on camera, but for those you don't know, Crash and Emily, they work their tails off behind the screen producing everything. So you guys do a great job. But I think all four of us really make the show what it is, and that's why I have so much fun doing it.
Thank you. But I do want to ask you before I ask you about your kind of what you're doing now with your kind of next step that you're doing with NFL Network.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, just coming back to USC football, looking at the 2025 season, what do you think is the keys for this team to be successful just going into this year, especially with, everything that's been happening, a lot of it positive, but what do you think the keys are to success on the field?
Yeah, the first thing is, and Coach Riley obviously is going to make this a point of emphasis, but we've got to learn to finish football games. That's going to be the biggest thing. I mean, you saw last year how many games we were this close. And I know people don't want to hear the story over and over. Oh, we're this close. We're so close. We're so close. It was true, right? But you can only say that for so long. You've got to find a way to not be close. You got to find a way to get it done, right? And that's something for USC this year. They've got to find a way to finish those football games. They've got some guys coming back from last year that dealt with that adversity, that know how to handle those situations, and they can teach some of these transfer them younger guys, how to learn from that and go out there and get the job done. And the other thing for me, and I think most important, is obviously Jade Mayava is going to have a big role this year, and he's going to get pushed by Hassan Longstreet, Sam Heward. That's going to be great competition to watch. But this team needs to find an identity quickly. Right. Last year, we thought, okay, who was the number one receiver? Are they a pass-heavy team? Is Miller Moss going to be the guy that has to win every game after the LSU game? Are they going to lean on Woody Marks? Is the run game going to take over? Is the offensive line going to get better? There were just so many questions that were still being asked in week 8, week 9, that they never found their identity. This year, they really need to do a good job of finding out who they are as a football team, offensively and defensively, and then use those to their advantage. And then obviously they're going to have to adapt in the Big Ten. There's some tough opponents. There's going to be some fun games this year. But overall, I think we've got a really good chance to make an impact and make some noise in 2025.
It really did seem like that. I covered football practice on Thursday afternoon, and that just really seemed like just the sentiment from just Riley as well as all the players who interviewed with the media afterwards.
Yeah.
And then obviously now I do want to ask you about just the exciting opportunity you've got recently working with the NFL Network on Good Morning Football. What has that been like, just your few weeks you've done with them so far?
Yeah, it was cool. I was Kyle Brandt was actually going to be gone. I think it was a week before the combine, or the week of the combine. So a couple weeks prior, they reached out. My agent, who I work with now with Athletes First, his name's Gideon. He texted me and said, "Hey, really cool opportunity. NFL Network wants you to come on Good Morning Football." I had no prior connections or conversations with them, so it was out of the blue, but I jumped on it obviously right away. I knew that was a big time opportunity. So they called me out, and then I went out there and did the first 2 days. I was booked for the first week, did the first 2 days, and the hard work and everything kind of paid off. So they came up to me and said, "Hey, we really enjoy what you're doing. You're doing a great job. We'd like to have you back for another week." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I would love that." So then they booked me for another week, and I got to do 2 full weeks. It was so cool, Crash, just the way they do things, and obviously here at USC, they do it a certain way. At other places, they're going to do it differently. But it was cool to see one of those big time national television shows, the way that everything was ran, how they prepared, how they handled stuff. I got to be with Manti Te'o, Jamie Erdahl, Peter Schrager, who now went to ESPN, but getting to learn from those guys was awesome. And yeah, I had a blast, but it went so well. Now I get to go back again next Monday. I'll be back on the show, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. I'll be back on the show covering all the pre-draft stuff, because that week's going to be the NFL draft. But yeah, it's been awesome. It's just every opportunity that I've been getting, whether it's with the NFL Network, Fox, and ESPN, some of these other things that I've done, you got to take advantage of them, right? Because that's something I want to do in the future. But yeah, I'm excited. So if you guys, I know Crash will be watching, but if you guys want to check out Good Morning Football next week, I'll be on there Monday, Tuesday.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it definitely has been cool seeing all the clips you put on social media. And then what are you most looking forward to about covering this year's draft and discussing that?
Yeah, I think just the storylines are the coolest part for me, right? Because you see all these mock drafts, right? Oh, and this guy's going here. This guy's going here. Oh, well, they're taking a quarterback at 1. Cam Ward's going 1. Abdul Carter's going 2. Are the Browns going to take a quarterback? No one really knows, right? There's so many, predictions and storylines and things that you can talk about, but the actual draft, when a guy that you didn't even think about jumps up into the top 5 picks, or a guy that maybe was a top 5 drops to the 15th pick. There's just so many cool things that happen on draft night, good and bad, but being able to cover it, I think is so exciting. And also these guys are learning about where they're going to go in their future, but they're also achieving their dreams that they had as little kids. Whether you're a 1st round pick, a 7th round pick, or undrafted, it's cool to get to watch that and see the experience that they have.
Absolutely. I mean, one player I've actually recently interviewed whose experience I had to hear about was Justin Diedich when I had him on my on the pod about a
Yeah.
month or two ago, and he was really talking about just how he's just kind of really just trying to live out that dream, especially going unsigned with the Rams last year.
Yeah, and that's hard, man. It's because when you get drafted, obviously you're going to the team regardless, first or seventh round, whatever it may be, and anywhere in between. Go to rookie minicamp. If you're unsigned, it's a big question, right? Am someone even giving me a chance? And then you're already an uphill climb, right? It's an uphill battle to even make a roster when you're an undrafted guy. So that was cool to see Justin get an opportunity and him making the most of it right now.
Absolutely. And then kind of how has it been, furthering your broadcasting career while also, starting a family, especially with, just everything that's been going on. I mean, you've talked about obviously, having a son recently.
Yeah, no, it's been cool. It's been busy. Having a son it's my first kid, so it's an unbelievable experience. I'm just so thankful. His name's Brooks. He's awesome. It was tough too because this was right towards the end of football season, and I had to go right back to the bowl game after that. A couple weeks after he was born, and then the couple weeks later, I'm going to Good Morning Football, and I'm pretty much gone for 2 weeks because that schedule is unbelievable. But I would not be able to do it all without my amazing wife, Paige. I know you've heard me talk about her a lot, but she is an absolute superhero. She really is. She allows me to go pursue my dream in broadcasting and get my career better because I know I have a great support system at home. My dog Coda, who's sitting right here next to me too, you can't see him, but he's been awesome. Like I said, it's whether it's sports, whether it's in the NFL, whether it's being at home now, whatever it may be, I've always had a great support system around me. And that's even more true with my wife and my son and my dog. So yeah, it's tough at times. It's challenging. There's some sleepless nights. There's some nights where we're still learning how to do this whole parenting thing, but it gives me an extra motivation too, right? I'm doing it for my family. I want to go out there and be successful and be on NFL Network and ESPN and Fox Sports and all these different things that I can do. So it's been pretty cool.
Well, Cody, I'm definitely grateful that you were able to make time for me tonight. And then
Yeah, absolutely, Chris.
I do have a couple more questions, and then
Yeah,
I'll let you go. So,
yeah.
what's the best advice you've ever gotten throughout your life?
I don't. That's a good question. I've gotten a lot. My dad has always been great and he'd always hit those one liners, when you're working out. And the one he would always tell me is just always about hard work, right? And, the old saying about, talent isn't going to beat hard work, right? You've got to be able to go out there and perform and spend those extra hours in the film room and wake up early and go do the stuff, the little things that other people don't like to do, right? I think that's a huge part of it. And then always staying right neutral with your motive or with your mentality. Sometimes when good things happen, you get too high, it's a drop off when things don't go your way. And if you get too low, it's hard to climb out of that pit, right? So I think the most important thing, especially at quarterback, is whether good or bad things happen in your life, you've got to try to stay right around the middle emotionally to keep you in the right mindset.
And then my final question for you, unless you give me something I want to follow up on, is what's the best advice to anyone they see Cody Kessler, and they aspire to be a USC Trojan, play in the NFL, and then do broadcasting? What's the best advice you got to someone who's looking up to you?
Yeah, that's tough. How long do we have? No,
As
no,
long
I'm
as you
just
need.
kidding. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, just always work hard, right? And always keep a positive mindset. Easier said than done. There's going to be tough moments. There's going to be adversity. I've faced it all when I was here at USC, from coaching changes to dealing with some of the sanction issues, to dealing with some tough losses, some big wins, and everything in between. We've always got to work hard. You've always got to keep a great support system around you. Keep the right people around you too, especially in high school, especially in college. I had a lot of friends and, growing up in high school, but the more successful you get, that circle is going to get smaller and smaller. You just got to make sure you have the right people around you, and know that they want the best for you. And I think that's very important. And also just, enjoy it, have fun. Life is very serious at times. There's going to be serious moments. There's going to be a lot of pressure when you want to play in college, play in the NFL, but you've got to remember to enjoy those little moments and have fun along the way. And I think if you do that, you'll be pretty good.
All right, Cody Kessler, thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Caution Tape. It was a pleasure to talk to you as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Crash. I'll
All
see you
right.
next week at the
All right.
Victory Pod.
That's going to do it for us here on Behind the Caution Tape. Big thank you to Cody Kessler. Be sure to follow him at ckessler6. Check him out on Good Morning Football next week as leading up to the draft. Cody, I'll see you soon and fight on.
Fight on.